All right, we're live. So thank you everyone for joining us today for the Discipline Matrix ad hoc meeting. The date is 11/20 and our start time is 6:10. We thank you so much for joining us. We have Lieutenant Durham, who is standing in for Captain Hubbard. He's also a participant and a regular member of this committee. He's going to be leading the discussion today. Chair Garcia Acosta is also here, but he's on mute. He is celebrating his daughter today at her school, so he will be chiming in, but wants to make sure that he's respectful of the background noise. We also have Miss Kathy Leonard, and we have Ann Pierce from the OPD department, who's also going to be assisting with taking notes. We want to begin, before I turn it over to Lieutenant Durham, with just a general census of how we want to proceed for next week, seeing that the 27th, which is next Wednesday, is our next meeting date, but it is the day before Thanksgiving. And we definitely want to make sure that people are enjoying their time of giving. So we want to discuss now whether we want to have the meeting or to pick it up again on the 4th, that following Wednesday. So with that, Chair Garcia Acosta, what say you, sir?
Well, I actually going to be in town and don't have any big plans for that for next week, but I do want to recognize the hard work of everybody on this ad hoc, and especially the folks that have been coming every week. So I'm totally open to picking it up the following week and give back folks their time so they can be with their loved ones and their family. But definitely wanted to open it up for a discussion to see if anybody else had any thoughts or objections. And if not, I think I'd be good with going ahead and kicking it over to the following week.
Okay, so Lieutenant Durham, what say you?
I'm open to whatever's good for the group. So I will make myself available. So whatever everybody agrees to, I will make sure I make myself available.
How about Miss Leonard? You may be the tiebreaker.
I'm available on that day.
On the 27th?
Yes, I am.
So it sounds like we're going to have it on the 27th as well. So I'll go ahead and
Cool.
send the calendar invite for that day. I already have the 4th through, I think, at the beginning of January on the calendar, but I'll go ahead and include the one for the 27th, and you guys can have that meeting as well. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I already have a calendar alert that looks like it's going through March.
Yeah, you probably should have something. I was trying to put as much on there as possible.
Okay.
And
If you're going to send a new calendar alert.
Yeah, because what happens is when you set it up, you can have it as a recurring meeting, and then you can set a date for how long it's going to be or not. So it's the same thing.
No, yeah, I understand that, but I think you just said you were going to send another calendar alert, and so I'm wondering which one will be the real one, so to speak.
So the one that you have for this meeting, this link, that's the one, that's the real one. But what I did not include for that was one, I think, for the 4th. I'll double check, excuse me, for the 27th. I'll double check. And I did that strategically if I actually did it, because I wasn't sure if we were going to have it on the 27th or not. But I'll double check.
I have it on both days.
If you have it on the 27th and 24th, then that means I don't have
right. That link went to the 27th and the 4th.
Perfect. All right. So I'll just double check for everyone. And if nothing needs to be changed, then I won't change anything. But if there is a change and I need to make sure it's on the website, then I will go ahead and notify you as well. Does that work?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Lieutenant Durham, we can turn it over to you.
Good evening. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
It's coming. There we are. Now we can.
Okay. Can everybody see the policy and the notes?
Yes. Well, it's I think you need to increase the size because we can't read it.
Okay. Is that better?
No.
No.
No, it's still illegible.
Is it getting bigger at all?
It is now, yes.
All right. Does that work?
Yeah, I can read that.
Okay. So I wasn't here for the last few meetings, so I will need everyone here to kind of advise where specifically we left off. Sergeant Pierce will be adding to the notes. I will reconcile these and go over these with Captain Hubbard when he returns to make sure that the notes that go out to everyone here are reflective of what's been covered or what needs to be addressed further. But if I could get someone to just advise of where we left off, and then I will go through and address the appropriate MOR sections as confirmed by the notes.
Okay, let me go and see what Lieutenant Hubbard sent out to see where we left off there. 'Cause off the top of my head, I don't know. So I'll have to
Okay,
look into
And
that.
yeah, Lieutenant Dorm. So typically, I think from his notes, a lot of the stuff that's in red is a lot of the semantics and language that he was working on and changing based off of the
Okay.
suggestions and input that we had given. So
okay,
we typically just review those revisions that he made. So I'm assuming it's typically those that are in red that he has
Okay.
highlighted. And then we were gonna jump into the next set of MOR violations. That I think we're in the section that we're anywhere in the range from suspension to termination, I believe.
okay,
Um,
so does this look accurate right here, what I'm showing? Consumption of intoxicants, accessing inappropriate websites. Is this, because
I
these are,
think we
these are-
may have gotten through all the way through number 18, I believe.
okay, so then we will move to. Then we will move to truthfulness.
You know, I don't have this document. I thought this was the document that Hubbard was going to send me, but he sent me something else.
Well,
I
I'll
have something
reconcile, I will reconcile all of this with Captain Hubbard, and then he will send something else out. I just want to make sure that I reflect everything that we discuss in the meeting correctly, and that we have some valuable conversation so that I can add to this. The next set of the next two actually are pretty important. Truthfulness, as it kind of relates to every single case, every single interview that an officer participates in. So if we did finish 18, if there are no objections, we can move to what would essentially be 19, if that's okay with everybody.
It's okay, but as I said earlier, I had a couple of suggestions. Should I email those?
Absolutely. No. Let's talk about them. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm prepared. Let's go for it.
So I'm looking at this document that Hubbard sent me, and it's entitled Discipline Committee Meeting 20 November 24. And I guess that's section 314 period 07, conduct towards others, demeanor. So yeah,
Is that
this
what
is
you're
kind of
seeing right
confusing.
here?
Yeah,
I'm looking.
And we discussed this the last meeting and we still needed input. So Ms. Leonard, yes, if you have input on this, it's totally appropriate to revisit this.
Okay, yes, that is the section. It's under, first offense is termination. And let me see, it is,
I'm gonna make this section bigger. Yes, if that's
Okay.
correct, I'm highlighting it right here.
okay, where it says, number 1, performance of duty, planting of evidence.
Okay, so we're
We
even-
talk about the planting of evidence on a suspect, but what about, does this cover or should it cover passengers in the suspect's vehicle or people who are with the suspect at the time that he's being questioned by officers?
It applies to all of that.
Okay, because it's
Plant-
not clear here. It just says suspect.
Okay,
So that would, I think when I read this, it didn't seem like anybody else would be covered. You know, the planting of evidence, that should also extend to that should extend to not only the suspect, but anybody who's with him.
okay. What section were you reading that out of?
Okay, that is 314 period 07, conduct towards others. But if you scroll down to first offense is termination, it's number 1. I can't see it on your screen. It looks,
Okay, no,
yeah, you gotta enlarge your screen again.
Okay, 314.3.9, planning of evidence. Okay,
Right, so if you go down to number 1, under first offense is termination, it talks about planting evidence on a suspect. So that number 1 has a number of 314.39-1.
go see it. Okay, and you just want to make sure that it documents that it's the subject or suspect or anyone else.
Right, anyone who's with the suspect.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second one was under section, I guess that's number 6, retaliation. And that one is 398.73-1.
Yep,
You see that one?
I
Okay,
do.
so under retaliation, it talks about who the member or employee, it's the last paragraph, who they should report to. So it says if there's any conduct that should be reported, it should be reported to the commander/manager, the Internal Affairs Division, and or the Public Ethics Commission. What about CIPRA?
So remember that anytime a internal affairs case is opened, CPRA is notified. It's part of the policy. So they are notified of the content of any case that we open.
Right, but
Whether-
I understand, but a couple of months ago, I pointed out at a police commission meeting that there was a delay in the time that Internal Affairs received a complaint, and that complaint was forwarded to CIPRA.
The
And so that's what I'm worried about, that whatever that deadline is, I don't know if it's you're supposed to report within 24 or 48 hours. That wasn't being met because some were like, the report to SIPRA wasn't made for months. There were a couple of where it was 6 months.
So I don't know about that specific incident. What I can,
Yeah.
what I can speak to is, um, we are required to report those to SIPRA. So it wouldn't be something, that, that we would have a member, who becomes aware of it, report directly to SIPRA. That would come from internal affairs as a result of their obligation to make that report, to a, manager or a commander, who would then make that preliminary inquiry to initiate an internal affairs case.
Okay, so looking ahead, at some point after the NSA has been satisfied, internal affairs, my understanding is internal affairs may go away and SIPRA may be the agency that'll be handling all complaints against police officers. So in that case, how is that going to work?
Well, I mean, there would have to be an amendment to, certain functions of policy. I'm not able to speak to what that would look like until we get to that point.
Okay, that's
But what
fair
I,
enough.
but what I can imagine is that the obligation of the member or employee wouldn't change. They would still be required to make, that notification of misconduct to a commander or manager. And that whatever we call internal affairs at that point, if there is a change, that division name would be placed into policy.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, I
Thank
think,
you.
and we would, like now, we would be convening most likely on what we want that wording, to look like.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, those were the only two.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. And as you look at this document right now, is this the document that you received? I know I was further down the page, but is this the document you received?
It doesn't have as much information as the one that we're presently looking at.
Okay, I
The
will,
one I'm looking at has, I think it's 4 pages.
again, I will meet with, Captain Hubbard and I will reconcile this and we'll get this out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments or anything that anybody would like to add? Okay. So 18, we left off with, refusal to provide name and serial number. So the next one, sorry, forgive me. So the next one,
Lieutenant Dorm, I'm sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Actually, go back up on your list. I believe we got
Oh.
to the first 18 of the original MOR violations, but I believe we left off right there at number 11. I'm sorry. Consumption of intoxicants.
Oh,
We did
okay.
not cover that. So I think that's exactly where we left off right there.
Okay, then let me,
I'm sorry about that.
No, not a problem, sir. Let me, go back up and we can. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so consumption of intoxicants, members and employees shall not at any time be under the influence of any intoxicating substance while on duty, carry any firearm, while consuming or under the influence of any intoxicating substance. Consume any intoxicating substance while off duty to the extent when reporting for his/her duty assignment, the ability to perform their duty is impaired, or consume any intoxicating substance while on duty unless necessary in the performance of police tasks, and then only with specific permission of a commanding officer and never in uniform. So I'll go back to the top, give everybody a chance to look at that or read that on their own. And then ask that if anybody would like something clarified, or if I might be able to provide examples. Just a reminder, some of these MORs I've actually I've never seen violated or heard of them being violated. And if so, some of the subsections of these I haven't seen violated, and haven't heard scenarios in which they have been. So I might ask that I take coming up with an example as a deliverable, but I would like to hear what we all think about these questions, what we might want to see added under this specific MOR, or things we might want to edit or change.
That last bullet point. The member or employee shall not consume any intoxicating substance while on duty unless necessary in the performance of a police task. Not sure what that means.
So the
Under what
example,
circumstances would that happen?
if someone's working undercover and their life is potentially being threatened if they don't test dope or something like that.
Ah, okay.
So, these circumstances do arise where an officer could be working undercover, and to maintain that status and to maintain their safety, or potentially the safety of someone else, might be asked or even forced to consume what is recognized as an intoxicant for the purpose of their duty under those circumstances.
Okay, that's clear. I think I've seen some of that on Law and Order, but
Yeah,
anyway.
so and again, right, like it doesn't mean that the question isn't fair, that it won't arise. So for example, let's say that occurs and it comes to light, and let's say that a commander or a supervisor doesn't believe that it was necessary, or someone doesn't believe that it was necessary under the parameters of the policy. It still
Right.
can be initiated as a case because it's a question, and that question will have to be answered. And that member might be asked during the course of an internal affairs investigation to address why they did or did not do something.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we okay with the wording of this? Do we want to change anything? All right, I'm gonna move to 35630-1. Sorry, when I make my screen bigger, it causes me to lose my place. Okay, so this one's going to be accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, sharing inappropriate material. members and employees shall not intentionally access, view, download, provide, or share inappropriate material while on duty or in a police facility, except in the performance of an official police task.
Okay, I've got a question about this one.
Go for it.
So, this says while on duty. But I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but there were some officers who were on social media, and I think they were texting each other too. They weren't on duty, but they were forwarding racist and sexist materials to each other. So
Yeah, I
you're
believe
not
that
you're
was
not on
Antioch
duty.
PD.
You're not on duty while you're doing that. But you're communicating with other police officers. Is that considered to be unacceptable?
So that, and when I think of that off the top of my head, the way it's being described, that, in my opinion, with the backdrop of this policy, falls into bringing the department into disrepute, which doesn't fall into this policy.
So it's covered somewhere else?
It's covered somewhere else.
In this document, in just another section?
In this document.
Okay.
So that would be covered under the disrepute.
Disrepute. Yeah, bringing the
Okay.
department into disrepute.
But given the circumstance that Ms. Leonard's talking about, like the Antioch PD that was sharing all these racist text messages, would they be in that circumstance? Would they be in violation of both sharing inappropriate material online and disrepute to the department? Like or you defer to the higher one?
The higher one, accessing. So accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, sharing inappropriate material, and then it says, shall not intentionally access, view, download, provide, or share inappropriate material while on duty or in a police facility. And so disrepute, the policy on disrepute would be the more applicable section, because it really falls under also too people knowing that you are a police officer, referring to yourself as a police officer, discussing things that you are doing while on duty and how you feel about being a representative of the agency and what you're doing while on duty. And so when we do talk about electronic devices and computers, cell phones, part of what comes into play is whether or not the device is a departmental device or not, and what the device is being for.
You're saying that would apply to this section, not to the one on disrepute?
No, I'm saying that what you described would fall under the disrepute section.
Right, and that would cover whether you were on duty or off duty, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am. Yes.
All
ma'am.
righty, thank you. Is the discipline the same? Whether you do that under this section or whether you do it under the other section?
Disrepute was more severe, no? Because I think we covered that already as one of the higher, more severe violations. Is that correct, Subsenesh?
I'm looking right now as I.
As he looks, I just want everybody to know I've joined Marsha Peterson.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Hi, Ms. Peterson.
Hi, Kathy Leonard. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I got a bad cold, but working
no.
with little kids, that comes with the territory.
Oh, vitamin C and echinacea.
Yeah.
So
I have to say hello to Chair Peterson. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm good, Ricardo. Chair Ricardo, yes, and Micah. Hi.
So we have a couple different sections. So general conduct. And what I want to remind everyone is that although the matrix outlines what a first, second, or third offense could potentially look like, the chief can operate outside of the matrix depending on what the specific circumstances of the case are, what the mitigating and or aggravating factors are. And so when we talk about, for example, text messages or inappropriate material, the type of material, and what the conduct was related to the material is all a factor. So let me go down to so as we look at this, let me make it bigger. Hope I don't lose my spot. There we go. This has a range where all three of them, all three of the ranges, termination is in the range.
Okay,
So S3 for first offense, let's say S3 to termination. So, you know, you depending on what specifically was done, you could be looking at termination for the first offense based off the aggravating and the mitigating factors and what specifically happened in the case, what the logic or reasoning was, how it came about. All these things become a factor.
okay,
And so I want to go back to that is the reason why these conversations are important. If there's a feeling that you want to ask that it not be specific to on duty or in a police facility, that's a conversation we should have. So it's open
Is
for
the
the
audio
conversation.
connected? I don't hear anything.
Am I not?
Hello?
Yes, it's connected.
We hear you, Marcia.
We hear you.
Hello?
And Lieutenant, I think to that point, I think it would actually be good to put a pin on that for next week's discussion. I
Okay.
think some of these ones that take a little bit more of a nuanced conversation.
Okay.
Given all of our moving pieces tonight, I think next week we'll be a little more settled down to have a more further discussion around that.
No, absolutely. I just want everyone to be thinking, about that, and what ideally they would like to see. We don't all have to agree, but I think the conversation is important. And I think that we can make some positive leadway and see what we like and see what we don't like. So I will note that.
thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Okay, so improper dissemination of information.
I'm not hearing anything. And my audio is all the way up. Mhm. Okay, I'll log out and log back in.
Okay. Okay.
While she's doing that, Lieutenant Durham, I put a message in the chat. I don't know whether this is kind of where you guys picked up or not, but I was looking at the transcript
Okay,
last week. And it said that we were discussing, well, the discussion was centered on the need for further clarity regarding the sexual activity policy. And the meeting concluded with confirmations on following up next week to address that. So if we're not there yet, then that's definitely something I think you want to pick up on.
okay. Let me do this last one. Improper, okay, and then I'll jump to that.
You've got it.
I've got to see what number that is.
All righty.
Okay, so. All right. So. Improper dissemination of, I have information here. It says computer information, so let's see here. Members and employees shall not disseminate information obtained from a departmental/city computer without proper authorization. Do we have any questions about this?
I don't.
Okay. I'm going to go back up. And Chief of Staff, was there a,
Go
Was there a-
back. What does that mean? You can't disseminate information from a computer. Does that mean that you can't forward an email or a text, or you can't verbally tell somebody what was in a email or a text? What is that geared toward addressing?
our law enforcement systems are governed by the need to know, right to know. So if somebody doesn't have the right and the need to know, you cannot provide them information from our systems. So that is what that policy is designed to address. I cannot send somebody's rap sheet to their spouse, or if someone has litigation with someone, I can't send their rap sheet to the person that has litigation with them. Like I'm not allowed to.
Okay, so that's just addressing official correspondence, official business. I mean, what about sending someone that the next potluck is next Thursday? That's okay.
That is okay. And
So
then
does it-
again,
Mhm.
and then
Go ahead.
again, our computers and departmental computers and cell phones and email are for official use and official business, which is outlined in policy as well. So some of these MORs refer to content that's addressed in other sections of the policy.
It purports to almost be like the Bible, and if it's not in here, you can't charge anybody for it.
No, I understand. And that's as you know, that's the purpose of this. So if there's something that we would like to see added, or we want clarified, please let me know what you're.
Yeah, that's just a ongoing concern of mine, that when you try to be so comprehensive, you can find yourself in a situation like the one we found ourselves in, where the investigator says, policy doesn't explicitly say I can't use my personal funds, and therefore he was cleared by IAD. So we got to be careful of being so comprehensive that we don't allow for those aberrant instances where someone can argue, hey, it's not in here, and this is meant to be all comprehensive. That's not in here, so you can't charge me for that. So that's why I ask these questions. Like, we need to be very careful when we start listing everything as being in here and something pops up and it's not in here. So we need to be careful. That's all I would say is my overarching concern.
Okay, yeah, no, I completely understand. Would you like me to make a note on this specific MOR
Not,
section?
not just that one, it kind
But
of
just in
applies
general.
in general.
Okay,
I almost want, and I talked to this issue last time we met last week, that in our introduction or preface, somehow we should state that the intent is to capture as many instances of misconduct as possible, but it's not meant to be all encompassing. It includes, as I think it was Deacon Lyle said, federal and state laws also can be applied. So I think Lieutenant Hubbard, I think he was last week, Acting Chief Hubbard, is taking that into consideration and beefing up our preface or our introduction. So let's keep going.
okay. Chief of Staff, do you have the specific MOR section that was,
Around that,
yes?
I believe that was the one you got. Oh, you just moved down. Go
Oh,
back, go
I'm
back, go back, go
sorry.
back. I think you see where it says sexual activity. There was something there about off-duty and on-duty sexual activity. That's where a big part of the conversation was last week. Yeah, that was a fun topic. That was a fun topic. There was a
I
right there,
gotcha.
prohibited. And because they were focusing a lot on the new policy,
Okay,
right? The misconduct policy and what was going to go on there. So we're really trying to drill into what are those things that people can do that are appropriate. Let's see, expand and clearly define prohibited behaviors, including electronic interactions, sexting, or inappropriate use of information obtained during investigations. Also ensure alignment with broader harassment and ethics policies. And I think that's more along the lines of what Chair Emerita was talking about. Looking into what are some of those broader umbrella type of encompassing, I guess, statements you can make so it's all inclusive and not so like, hey, this is not in there, so I can kind of get away with it. Was that a little bit helpful? Let's see, I have some more. Let's see. There was one more thing. Yeah, sexual activity on duty. Yes, differentiating acceptable conduct from misconduct, right? Consensual relationships versus coercion. Potential legal challenges regarding officers' rights outside of duty. That's another note.
okay,
So that I think that's around the area where he has read, like there was a lot of discussion about it and they wanted to tap into it just to make sure that it was solid.
okay.
Sound about right, Chair Emerita?
Yeah, yeah. Because we don't want to be so specific and say this is everything in this manual that can be actionable, when in fact you can't cover everything. I did it on a Tuesday and it only says you can't do it on the weekend. Okay. So we just have to be careful about thinking this is everything. And if we are intending it to be as such, I think that's the trap. What is this word? Employees shall not inappropriately convert or attempt to convert. What is
It's
this?
convert. I think it's just,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, I
that's fine.
see. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I got a head cold, and so don't blame me for anything tonight. So there should be a space after a T. Yeah, okay.
sorry. That's not.
Okay. I didn't know if that was
Yeah.
police speak.
No, that's a typo. So. So did we talk about this section?
I think let's wait until Deacon Rouse is on this call.
Okay, so we want to
Yeah,
leave
let's
that
just
one out.
hold that.
Okay, hold that. All right, I'll make a note of that. We'll hold that one. Was there anything else that we wanted to discuss as it related to prohibited activity, sexual activity on duty? Is there anything that we wanted to, or would we prefer to wait for?
Let's just wait.
Okay.
That's a conversation.
Okay,
Yeah, as it pertains to 331407, there was a very nuanced conversation that I can't recall all the points Deacon Lyles was making. But we did have a very spirited conversation. I think we should pick that back up with both him and Captain Hubbard present.
okay. All right. Do we want to just finish out 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18?
As far as we can, I think.
Okay. All right.
Chair Garcia Costa, what do you think? What do you want to do?
So this is what I'm thinking. I think getting through 18 is a good goal for us tonight. I know Chief of Staff also has another commitment soon that we're juggling. I am hiding in the bathroom in my daughter's gymnasium right now, taking this call.
All right.
So I do think that if we get to 18 though, mark 31407 for next week's discussion. And then next week we could definitely, and it would be a good place for us to pause and then pick up the discussion for next week as well.
Okay. All right, I'll make a note of that. Let's get to 35690. Unauthorized use of electronic systems. Members and employees shall not use or access departmental/city/county computer systems, databases, records, and/or other communication equipment unless authorized to do so by competent authority. I kind of spoke to this as it pertains to the need to know and the right to know. I believe that this policy is also, go back up here. So obviously, I believe 35689 and 35690 very closely related. I would like to hear any questions or comments people have about this one, so I can make any notes, take any notes down, or answer any questions.
I have a question. Can you be charged with both of these? Tell me how you're charged with both of these.
So I want to point something out. So members in policy specifically refers to sworn personnel, and employees are professional staff than anybody else. And so you could have For example, you could have someone that is technically physically capable of accessing information on a computer or a database that they do not have authorization to access. And then that same individual could potentially send that information that they're not even authorized to access to someone else, which would meet the requirement for improper dissemination. So you can't have both of them at the same time. You're on mute. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Disseminate and use are considered different.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay.
I mean, I could use the information for personal reasons or personal gain. I can also send it out. So you can't have them both at the same time.
Mhm.
So does OPD's computer actually, if you log in, is there a record of who logged in at what time and what time they logged off?
So I have to check on how far ITD documents access to computers, but I do know that certain databases record not only the use of the database, but the authorization, password, username that was used to access it.
Okay,
But I will take that. I'll take that as a deliverable to just find out about the individual computers, because I do not know whether ITD documents when or how when a departmental computer is accessed by the user or someone else, and how that information is recorded. So I'll take that as a deliverable.
great. Yeah, I've worked on systems where they can, I'm just thinking of Salesforce, but there's other systems too where there's a record of where a person went on the computer program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when I hear your question, I'm thinking not only about the computer itself, but whatever database or system they accessed while inside of the computer. So I
Right,
will
because they
take
might
that.
have access to certain parts of it, certain records within the computer program, but not everything.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
let me see if I can find that information out, and I'll take that as a deliverable for the next meeting. Do we have any other questions or comments for that specific MOR? Okay. Okay, so sorry. So we're at use of physical force. Physical force, the use of physical force level 1 through 4 shall be restricted to circumstances specified, by departmental policies and law. So this is a big one. And I believe, and I'm going to ask that we save this one because there have been some changes to the use of force policy. There have been some some special orders, not changes to the use of force policy, but some special orders that have come out. And so, if in reading this, everyone here doesn't have specific questions about this small section right here, it might be better to wait and tackle this one separately and spend a little bit more time on this one completely separate from everything else. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but use of force is a big topic, and
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And if I just put in the chat, and if there's anything you could send to us ahead of time to review so that
I
we
will.
can actually
I
come to
will.
prepared for discussion. Yeah.
I
Because
will
this is
make
such an
sure
important one.
I will make sure that the special orders that have come out and all the policies related to use of force are sent to you, so that we can have a very informed and open conversation about this.
I would actually also argue the same thing for custody of prisoners. I know there's
Okay.
lots of stuff that comes up with that.
Okay,
And worst case scenario, even deaths when people are in custody. So I think that's something that we should probably spend some time on as well.
okay. All right, that's fair. I've made a note of both of those. All right, so we will move on to security of departmental business. Members and employees shall not reveal confidential reports, records, and/or information to an unauthorized person. Questions regarding the disclosure of information shall be referred to competent authority. Do we have any questions about that? Most of the time that you would see something that comes across this MOR would be someone speaking on behalf of the department, as it relates to anything that might be considered confidential, such as internal affairs cases or criminal cases, which you could have both. So most of the time we ask that those referrals be made to the media team or public information officers, or the chief of staff, for direct correspondence to or from the chief. So that's usually how that works. I have not seen this MOR section used, but that is, I'm sorry, I see you looking closely at your screen, forgive me. And so if I don't have any questions on that one, I will move to one that I think we've all seen. Refusal to provide name or serial number. 39877.
That would be refusal to
Provide name
provide it
or
to
serial number.
to a member of the public.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So refusal to supply name and serial number. Upon request, members and employees shall supply their names and serial number to any person who seeks such identification.
Now, this is interesting. In the throes of some, interaction with the public that requires officers to be alert to, some physical harm, or they're engaged in some physical activity, say, take down and handcuff. This is within a reasonable time or immediately, or how does this function? Tell me how this comes up.
So when you say, tell me how it functions, how have I seen it?
Yeah,
What
how
should
does
it
this
look
come
like?
up?
So,
Yeah, what is this?
So, example, I'll be the officer in this scenario. I'll role play. I'll be the officer. Individual approaches me. Officer, what is your name?
And what is the officer doing at the time?
Let's say the officer is engaged in addressing a dispute. Let's just say it's a domestic dispute. The officer's engaged in a domestic dispute, and a community member who is observing the officer address this dispute wants to know the officer's name and or serial number, possibly for the purpose of making a complaint, but we don't know. They approach the officer. I'm the officer in that scenario. Officer, what's your name? This is how it should go. And this is being, if the officer is in a safe in a position to, and I'm not talking about the officer is trying to take someone into custody or engaged in like for lack of a better term, a fight. Let's say let's just all assume that this is completely, everything's safe, everything's okay. Officer's just having a conversation with two people, and approaches and says, officer, what is your name? How it should go. I address the community member. Hello, my name is Officer Dorm, and my serial number is 8946. Is there a reason why you asked my name and badge number? Is there something I can assist you with? Is there anything else I might be able to provide?
Yeah, but that's not required. That last part, is it?
I no, I completely understand that. I'm role playing, like how I would do it. So, and so the reason for that is, if someone is not pleased or expresses displeasure, there's other steps that have to be taken. But the policy requires that if someone asks for your name and or serial number, that you shall provide it. And so,
see, I'm trying to understand that one, because I do want to be understanding of an officer engaged in conduct or contact with the public that requires the officer's undivided attention.
absolutely.
And if someone is hollering at me, what's your name, and your badge number, I'm not trying to deal with that right then and there. And so when you say refusal, that only means that while the officer's on the scene, I would suspect you couldn't leave the scene without responding to a citizen's request. But I think there's a line between requesting this kind of information and being sensitive to the fact that the officer is carrying out an important function, and responding might interfere with the officer being able to successfully complete whatever the task is. So I'm just trying to understand.
I completely agree with
Context.
you. I completely agree with you. When I looked at this policy, and I've seen this one a lot. I wanted to see a failure as well as a refusal. So a
Yeah.
failure can be looked at as something maybe like a class 2, unintentional. I was engaged in something. I was asked for my name and or serial number. I said to the community member, I'll get that for you as soon as I'm done with this, or I heard it. Maybe I didn't even acknowledge them.
Acknowledge it.
Maybe I didn't acknowledge them because I couldn't, but I heard it. And then maybe in the midst of everything I was dealing with, I simply and legitimately forgot. That might be something that's looked at as a failure, where you would have it's unintentional. They didn't mean to do it, but it happened.
But even that's subjective as to whether or
Absolutely.
not there was a failure, because I mean, I was just so engaged, or there was a refusal.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm concerned about. I
And-
don't want to ding anybody if they're engaged in something that just doesn't allow me at the time to turn around and say, I'm officer so-and-so, and this is my badge number.
Absolutely. And body worn camera, and the evaluation of evidence statements by the subject, officer, witnesses, that's what's used to determine not only whether there was a violation, but what the appropriate discipline should be if that question violation is sustained. I do agree with you wholeheartedly. I believe that that this MOR section should have a class 2. I believe there should be a class 2 for a failure, the same way we see with a failure to take a complaint. The refusal to take a complaint is a class 1. A failure, unintentional, to take a complaint is a class 2. I would like to see a class 2 for a failure to supply name and serial number. And I think that's kind of what you're speaking to, as far as what was the intention in the interaction? What was the officer dealing with? How was this information requested? Was the officer in a position to provide that information? Was it reasonable for the officer to provide that information at that specific time? In the MOR here, it says upon request. I've heard questions about that. Is that right? Right when the request is made? Is it 5 minutes or 10 minutes after? Is it after the officer is done completing the task that they're engaged in? So that's what this conversation is about right now, trying to come to trying to put some ideas out there of what we want to see this MOR look like.
Okay,
So
can we make a note that we should explore a class 2 for failure? Because
Absolutely.
I know if I'm in the middle of something pretty heated, and a citizen who is not engaged in the actual situation that I've been called to is demanding this information from me, I might be more focused on why I'm there, and I'm not refusing. It's just not contextually feasible for me to provide that information.
I can appreciate that. And sometimes where we see this is on during protests.
Mm.
So, there are a lot of circumstances where it might not be feasible. And I think that evaluation of the evidence, body worn camera, witnesses, the subject officer statements, allow us to evaluate whether or not the failure was a refusal, whether it was just a failure, whether it was something that was intentional or simply a mistake, or just the officer forgot. So I agree with that. I'll mark that as a to note.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We recently had a discipline committee hearing around that, and it would have been great to have guidance to determine and really evaluate whether it fell into a classification of refusal versus somebody just making an earnest mistake in the heat of a difficult arrest or an emergency or something of that nature. So definitely appreciate it, and I definitely think we should make note of that to further parse that out.
And I appreciate that, Chair, and to Marsha Peterson's point, when we look at a MOR such as this, it really does limit what you're able to do simply based off the words right here. There's really no discretion. And
Right.
so
And I think that
this is
it's too hard and fast because context is everything and who's asking is everything. So, yeah, let's make a note that there should be a lesser included offense or something.
okay. That note has been made. And do we want, I can read truthfulness. We can discuss it at the next one. And the only reason why I want to read truthfulness is because this MOR section applies to every interview that an officer might provide to Internal Affairs or CPRA under oath. The truthfulness applies to everything. And so I want to read this just to keep this in everybody's minds. Truthfulness. Members and employees are required to be truthful at all times, whether under oath or not, except when necessary in the performance of official duties. Such exceptions shall be documented on the appropriate police reports.
What in the heck does it mean? Except when necessary in the performance. Is that like undercover stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
Yes, ma'am. So
is that ever challenged? How is that challenged?
when you say challenged, what do you
Well, you're in an arbitration and hey, I was undercover. You have to be specifically undercover, I guess, right? With documented paperwork. I mean, you can't just start lying. Who truthful in your interaction with the public? In other words,
well
I didn't call that citizen by those names. That and somebody's body worn camera or somebody's cell phone records you calling them all sorts of awful things. That's untruthful. So the only exception is if you're undercover. Is that what I'm hearing?
such
You can
exceptions
lie.
shall be documented on the appropriate police
Yeah.
except when necessary in the performance of official duties.
Okay.
And
we know what those official duties are spelled out somewhere in some other document.
and also, you see, you might see a ruse to gain a level of compliance from someone in a certain scenario. in which that would be documented in a police report. So there are other examples, but I will say again, to your point earlier, members or employees are required to be truthful at all times, whether under oath or not. So again, and I've had people ask questions like, well, how does this apply to, you know, my conduct outside of work? I've had this question. So, you know, this MOR section, I think it's important for everyone here to have this section on their minds as we address the discipline matrix, because truthfulness to me and is the foundation of so much. How you show up for an interview, how you address the public and community. And so this MOR section is very, very important. So I wanted to read it just to give everybody something to consider and think about as far as what they want to see out of this section, whether we believe that this section as it's currently authored, whether it's comprehensive enough. Is there too much ambiguity or not enough? I don't know.
I don't want any ambiguity. And I hate subjectivity. I just really wanted to understand what this exception, when necessary in the performance of official duties, and how does that play out in any scenario you could offer?
Well, I think one instance where that happens is when you're interrogating a suspect, say at OPD, like you're in an interviewing room or something. I believe that the Supreme Court said you can lie to a suspect. You can tell them the guy next door, his accomplice is spilling the
Spilling the
beans
tea.
when in fact he's not
Yeah.
spilling the beans.
Yeah,
So there are circumstances where lying
can
is
see
okay.
that
I don't
one.
like that. I don't like that because I don't think you should do that. But
I can
So
see that
apparently
one.
the Supreme Court
Kathy.
said it's okay for officers to lie if they're, trying to get information from a suspect.
I can see that in an interrogation for sure.
So there are
And that's,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
official duties.
Yeah, so there are circumstances in which the police or a police officer where they can be untruthful or dishonest or lie. I don't know how we feel about the way this is written right here, whether we want to add to it, whether we think there needs to be some clarity, whether we believe that there needs to be some outlining of or delineation between on duty, off duty, and to what capacity. But I did want to read that because I do think truthfulness is a foundation of so much within the walls of the police department, and how officers in our agency engage and interact with those we serve.
Yeah, I mean, let's
I'd
just be
like to hear what
honest.
Reggie has to say about this
Yeah.
section.
He's not on the call
Okay.
tonight.
So
No,
no,
I
Yeah.
know, but I'm saying.
I
We
understand.
definitely need some
What-
further discussion.
Yeah,
no, we
For sure.
we can pin this.
And also, Lieutenant Durham, also as it pertains to juveniles too, but because I think there may have been some legislation passed that
There,
officers can no longer lie for interrogative purposes when it comes to juveniles.
we have there's specific policy as to how we are to engage with juveniles. I will get that out to all of you as well. so that we can have, again, a more informed conversation and address any questions as it relates. Let me go back.
Thank you for that, Chair. That was important.
I will. Sorry. So.
And Lieutenant, the other thing, I just also want to pin is, I don't know if there's also if there's any difference as it pertains to talking to potential informants as well. I know there's a lot of complaints that happen around just intimidation and coercion and things like that. And so, I mean, I could see that falling under the umbrella of following official duty or tasks, right?
Okay.
I definitely want to think about that and further discuss that later at some point.
Absolutely. So I've noted that as well, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
So we went 11 through 18. We've pinned use of physical force, custody of prisoners, refusal to provide name and serial number, and truthfulness for discussion at the next meeting. I have taken a few deliverables and I will be sending out myself, or I'll make sure that Captain Hubbard sends out the appropriate policies as it relates to use of force, custody of prisoners, and sexual conduct or sexual misconduct. Are there any other questions that I might be able to address or field in this moment? Oh, Marcia, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Saying I don't have any.
Chair Garcia?
Nor do I. No, and I look forward to just reviewing as much as we can ahead of time, because it looks like these are some pretty heavy discussions that are ahead of us for next meeting.
They are, and I just want to say I appreciate all of you for your willingness and your dedication to this process. I have, like Captain Hubbard, have been adjusting to a new role and position. So forgive my absence in the last few meetings, but I'm still heavily and deeply committed to this specific ad hoc as well. So
What's your new role?
I'm back in the Office of Internal Accountability. So that's where I started. That's where I'm back, in the Office of Internal Accountability. So I deal with a lot of policy and audits. So
I see. Okay. And acting Captain Hubbard is now Captain Hubbard without the acting?
he's still acting. He's the acting captain of Internal Affairs.
Because Mendoza is now something else.
Mendoza is the chief, the bureau chief for Internal Affairs. She's the deputy chief of the Internal Affairs Bureau.
We need a new wiring diagram.
An organizational chart. I believe we
Yeah.
have one. I'll make a note to get that out. All right.
All right, great. I think this may be a good place to pause.
Okay.
Chief of Staff, I think, I know you're multitasking as well, but I think this would be a good place for us to put a pin in it and call it for the evening, and we'll reconvene. Marsha, I'm not sure if you caught this, but we did agree to meet next week on Thanksgiving Eve. If you can't make it, or if you're out of town.
I'm out of town and I'm chief cook for about 20 people.
No,
I
We-
cannot.
So we have
We
one
figured.
abstention. She's like, no, I can't make it. Everybody else will be here for next week.
Okay.
Save me a plate.
I don't know how I can get it from Washington DC back to you, but
Do for that because that's a.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone
Of
have a good
course.
evening.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you,
good
everyone. See you
night.
next week.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
okay. Good night.